One of the biggest success stories in the Indian market is the Tata Nexon, and that's going to be our topic of this week's deep drive powered by Kotak Mahindra Prime. I'm Hormazd Sorabjee.
Hi, I'm Ketan Thakkar. Yes, Hormazd, I think for the first time ever, Nexon is going to cross over 2 lakh units this financial year. I would like to call that vehicle as, in Hindi, as we call it, Sarva Gunna Sampanna model. It caters to literally every end of the market. It has diesel, EV, CNG, petrol. If you want to buy a hatch, a premium hatch, it's an alternative one can explore
right.
for a sedan buyer, for an SUV buyer. Such a sweetly positioned and priced model, and in less than a decade, they've done over 1 million. So a phenomenal success from Tata Motors side, and probably the new wave that started in 2015, 2016 for Tata Motors.
That's right. I think, honestly, it was that resurgence that Tata Motors had. And, I'd like to take this back to actually Cyrus Mistry's time. A very short tenure of 4 years, but as we had said earlier, the intensity of product development in that, has been phenomenal. I think that was really the first model under his reign
Absolutely.
that they launched, and it's been a phenomenal success. Lots of ups and downs, which we'll get into, but I think actually the Nexon has its genesis in three chairmen, if you look at it. It started with Ratan Tata because the platform was the X1. They used the X1 platform, which underpinned the Vista, the Indica Vista.
Right.
And, that was his vision to develop a new platform. A new generation platform, because at that time they wanted to go to Europe. So it had to meet all the crash requirements. So we are talking about, 2006, 2007. So that was Ratan Tata's vision, actually, to imagine that you needed a car with the capability to kind of be upgraded to the latest safety standards. And obviously, Tata Motors reaped the benefits because the 5-star crash rating, which, they really milked and marketed, has been one of the reasons for the car's success. Then you had Cyrus Mistry, who launched the Nexon on that platform. And, clearly, it really was a huge success, did phenomenally well. And then I think Mr. Chandrasekharan, who kind of launched Tata's play into EVs again with the Nexon.
Right.
So I think all three chairmen at some point have really, kind of leveraged the Nexon to take it to the next level, or leverage their kind of vision to take it to the next level. So I think clearly, as you said, powertrain, I don't think any other compact SUV has so many powertrains.
It's insane, Hormazd. I think they have the diesel AMT, they have the conventional manual transmission, they have the AT. I think the wide variety that they offer is phenomenal. And to me, what is interesting while you reflected on the Vista platform, Hormazd, I mean, so clearly the success of Nexon, which is going to be the largest selling SUV in this financial year, actually the seeds were sown way back. I remember the Vista Manza days, and there was an Vista EV that was showcased at the Geneva Motor Show. And
that's right.
What I had learned when the Nexon EV was being worked upon, that, the EV work was done almost for a decade, and the real proof can be seen in later years. And eventually we saw Nexon EV coming out from
That's right. I mean, as we said earlier, it was a very quick turnaround. I think, I'd like to play that clip from Mr. Chandrasekharan's interview, where he told Gunter Butchek that, 4 years was too long. You had to have it done in 1 year. Let's hear that clip.
I called Gunter and then said, we've got to build an electric car. He said, 4 years. I said, I'm going to tell you something. You may think I'm a fool or I have no idea, but I said I need it in less than a year. He said, it doesn't happen in auto industry. I said, that is what we have to challenge.
So clearly, I think, the push was there even for the electrification. I think let's talk about the percentages. I mean, I think EVs right now, or the Nexon EV, about 12%.
That's right.
Of the total number.
Absolutely.
So that's 3,000 plus, which is a huge number.
Absolutely.
I think that's more than what certain compact SUV players are doing totally.
Absolutely.
And I think what's grown, Ketan, which is quite surprising, is the CNG option. Now, you would think CNGs is more for hatchbacks and, desires and, kind of less aspirational body styles. But no, I think clearly even the Nexon CNG, from what I understand, is as high as about 32%.
Now, what is phenomenal is, Hormazd, they've brought the the aspiration in the CNG model, the twin cylinder
That's right.
and turbo CNG
Correct.
and an AMT. Now it's such a right mix for an aspirational Indian buyer, and it just really hits the sweet spot. And
That's right. He's got the convenience of an automatic. He's got, let's say, the road presence of an SUV. And clearly, you know, as you said, it's been very, very aspirational. So I think that's something which Tata has done overall for the CNG segment. We've talked about that earlier. And, you know, I think really I'm surprised, you know, the manufacturer have not really seen this opportunity.
I agree, Hormazd. And also, how can one forget the diesel powertrain? That has ensured that, you know, if one is looking for a diesel high-performing SUV, we also have diesel. And one of the reasons why Maruti Suzuki has not been able to get back to that number one position in the compact SUV space is the diesel, isn't it, Hormazd?
I think very good point, Ketan. In fact, that's what I want to touch upon. If you look at it, Brezza doing about 17,000 units with just one engine.
Phenomenal.
That is phenomenal. Can you imagine if they had a diesel? There is no way
Anyone
Nexon-
could have touched them.
Yeah, no, anyone could have touched them. I can say with certainty, if the Brezza had the diesel, they would definitely have been the number one compact SUV player. You know, so
Absolutely.
but they're managing this 17,000 unit with just one engine. Tells you a lot. The profile of the buyer who just wants a no-nonsense SUV, not interested in performance. Most of them are like that. It's all about finally utility in this space as well.
Absolutely.
So sport utility vehicle, you know, sport not so much, utility
More.
a lot more. So the space, practicality, all that I think is really a clear reflection. But Tata Motors, on the other hand, for all its negatives, clearly it doesn't have the kind of, let's say, reputation of Maruti. People don't buy them blindly like they buy Maruti. It's kind of compensated with these multiple powertrains.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a very interesting kind of, let's say, situation in the market right now, where Tata, just on the strength of its powertrains, it has beaten Maruti's reputation and overall, you know, it's kind of peace of mind that it offers. Yeah.
One thing that comes out clearly, Hormazd, is that both Indian brands, Tata and Mahindra, we've spoken about that in the past, but specifically for Nexon, amazing on design. That was a renaissance of a new design language.
Absolutely.
At,
The first
Tata
really
Motors.
coupe SUV kind of a design, which clicked quite well at that time. It was very new, very fresh. And I think what they did very smartly is that they didn't compromise on the front. You know, I always say that, you know, SUVs need to have high bonnets. You know, they have to have that big chested feel about it. Droopy noses never sell in the Indian market. Not one of them has. We've seen failures like the S-Cross, you know, Renault Capture, you know, to name a few. So really, because that crossover look doesn't work, this is with a proper kind of a bold front, raised stance. And, you know, the coupe design also worked very well. And I think though the rear seat also from you know, it's may not be the most spacious and you may not have the maximum headroom, but really the ergonomics they've got over there was spot on, the seating position, and overall it's a comfortable vehicle that can even be a family vehicle, not a massive boot. But I think you know, the people who drive a Nexon are people who find it very comfortable, a very secure vehicle, and I think that's really the main selling point there.
And Hormazd, I mean, like I was saying, you know, it caters to different ends of the market. 40% of Nexon buyers today are first-time buyers. So clearly, Tata Motors has drawn away a lot of first-time buyers into the SUV space, which is the largest segment of the Indian market. By the way, led by Nexon, the compact SUV, which is the sub-4 meter entry SUV market, for the first time is going to cross 1.5 million vehicle, and 30% share comes from Tata Motors
Right.
with both Punch
Punch,
and
yeah, that's
Punch
right.
and Nexon. And as far as its own portfolio is concerned, 80% of its total SUV sales comes from both Nexon and Punch, and 65% of its total sales comes from Nexon and Punch. So clearly, Tata has really mastered the compact SUV segment, which is turning out to be a massive entry for a lot of global brands to get into, Hormazd.
Right, but you know, it's interesting. A lot of global brands, you know, they've got into this segment. But what's interesting is that we were seeing earlier the center of gravity shifting to the mid-size SUV
Yeah.
segment. That really was the sweet spot.
Right.
Because you could get global models in
Yeah.
over there. I mean, sub 4 meter is only unique to the Indian market.
Indian market.
You have to design specifically for India.
Correct.
And that has its own challenges. It's just one market. You can't use this product in other markets. So scale becomes a problem. You know, investments then become a problem. But with the mid-size SUV, you know, you could bring, let's say Duster, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, it's can be used in so many other markets, and it's going to be exported over here. So clearly, that is a segment that exists globally, the mid-size SUV segment. But I think now the center of gravity is shifting back to compact SUVs, I think, after the GST cuts.
Yes.
Because
indeed.
28 to 18%, and we've said this earlier, the segment that's got the maximum advantage in terms of absolute value
Is a sub-4 meter
is a
SUV.
sub-4 meter SUV.
Absolutely.
And we are seeing that. In fact, I think Tata's, accelerating strongly into number 2 position away from Mahindra is on the play of probably these two models, the
Absolutely.
Nexon and the Punch.
Yeah, both these models account for almost 38 to 40,000 units for Tata Motors, which is phenomenal.
That's right.
One can't even imagine, that entry buyers actually getting into that space with such kind of vehicle.
And Ketan, that is a phenomenal volume. And if you look at it, there is one major chink in the Nexon, and frankly, with all Tata Motors portfolio, and that's their after-sales service, which is quite frankly, really pretty bad. It needs to be improved. And but again, it tells you a lot that clearly there are a lot of happy Nexon customers as well. They'd keep buying it. Though I think that is one part they need to address. I personally feel that it's more a question of soft skills. It's the 5% that have problems, which Tata Motors are not addressing properly. They don't resolve it fast enough. And that 5% is what is amplified on social media. And that becomes, the main issue.
Yeah, really sad. I mean, that 95% who are happy customers, you barely hear about them. But it's the 5% that, we hear about them on social media often.
That's right. Because, I mean, if you take the overall volume, 20,000 units a month, and that's a lot of cars. So, obviously, and when you're happy, obviously, you're not going to say anything that I like it, it's good, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But overall, I think service is an issue for Tata Motors. And I think that's one thing they really need to improve. That is really the weak chink right now in the Nexon. As a product, people are appreciating it. Even on the diesel, it's the only diesel where you don't have to fill in AdBlue. They use the LNT inox trap technology. So I think a lot still going for it. And I think what is amazing, Ketan, is that it tells you a lot about model life cycles in India. You kind of peak towards the end. It's 10 years. Nexon is going to be 10 years this year. And it's selling its absolute maximum. So, I think earlier there was talk of shifting Nexon from X1 to X4. But I think it just didn't make sense. Why go in for that investment when it's still selling right now, isn't it?
Phenomenal. I think every single time a new upgrade comes in, we kind of go back to Tata Motors to seek and understand that you've came out with this state-of-the-art new gen XO model architecture. What's really happening to the Nexon? But the amount that model has delivered in terms of volume, margin, profitability, it's a case of, why fix it when it ain't broke? So, and Tata Motors is doing a phenomenal job of it. Just to let our viewers know that there is a new gen Nexon coming in.
So the new gen is finally coming in, Ketan, the Garud, which is the thing. So I think that could be on the new the new platform, which is on the Sierra architecture, possibly.
Yes, indeed. So I think what is phenomenal for me from Nexon perspective is that they've ensured that the value proposition has remained solid all along. We've seen multiple competitions coming in the marketplace, but Tata Motors has moved from strength to strength. I mean, it's hard to imagine that Tata Motors sells 23,000 units, the highest ever volume in the 10th year. It's just quite crazy. And with the new gen model, Hormazd, the understanding is that it is going to get better on tech, better on ADAS features, better on they're going to improve on the styling and design front. So I think Tata Motors wants to kind of just like how we speak of Hyundai with Creta. I think Nexon for Tata Motor has become like the core and the backbone.
Yeah, absolutely. It is really the backbone of that model range right now, and clearly in the sub-4 meter space. But I think interesting on Nexon, as you said, it's evolved and all. I'll be honest. I think when we've done our comparisons, Nexon hasn't really won a comparo outright. I mean, we did one right now. It was a new venue over there. XUV 3X, so solid competitor. I think in many ways better than the Nexon. But I think it's that overall mix, that magical kind of mix which Nexon has of design, let's say of legacy, as well as the powertrain mix which they have, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think that's probably where, they really have an edge. And going forward, I'm sure, they might even package the one powertrain that's missing, and that is hybrids.
That'll be
A
interesting to
hybrid
see.
powertrain, going forward in the future, because we know Tata Motors are working on a 1.5 hybrid. I'm sure they could be working on a smaller one as well. Other manufacturers are. In fact, I think, Ketan, let's talk about the compact SUV segment and
Yes,
what
indeed.
others are doing, because clearly, looking at the Nexon success, everyone's going to be saying this is a segment we need to be in as well.
Oh yes, the last few years we saw a barrage of mid-size SUVs and C-segment SUVs. Yes, we still have another wave of C-segment SUVs to come, but the next few years we've got a bevy of sub-4 meters lined up from across vehicle makers, starting with Maruti Suzuki. There's an upgrade of Brezza coming. There's an upgrade of Fronx coming, and then there is series of subcompact SUVs coming in from Maruti Suzuki side. Your Hyundai's small EV is going to be an SUV EV.
That's right.
So again, we've got another subcompact.
That Bion-sized.
Yes.
Bayon.
So there's Bion happening, and then there is HE1i, which is an EV. So there are going to be two subcompact or other entry SUVs coming in from Hyundai side. The new IQ platform from Mahindra and Mahindra.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be very interesting, because Mahindra not getting one, but getting two compact SUVs.
Yes.
So that shows really, where they also see where, let's say the future volumes are. Again, I think a lot driven by these GST cuts. I think you've got the Vision S, which is, and the Vision X. One is a more upright, one a more sleek coupe type Nexon, absolute head-on Nexon rival,
Correct.
and one more of a Brezza rival. So I would say, two different types of compact SUVs. One more sleeker, coupe-like, one more upright and boxy. There's a market for both. So Mahindra's planning to address both of them. So that's going to be coming in 2027. And I think we just broke the story on the Bridger concept.
Yes.
We first broke the story that there was going to be a subcompact SUV from Renault, a mini Duster. And I think the big news is that it will come with a 1.2 NA hybrid.
Yes.
And the combined power of that hybrid is around 130 horsepower, which again is best in class.
Wow.
Be probably the most powerful compact SUVs with a combined total output. Phenomenal fuel efficiency. So that's very exciting as well, because you're getting even hybrids coming into the compact SUV
That's
segment,
exciting.
and every conceivable form of powertrain except probably hydrogen, which you're going to see. So I think it is going to be an exciting space.
I think the energy at Renault right now is pretty infectious. I mean, they are going great guns with complete autonomy of the factory, integration of entire a company within one. There were different entities earlier. Sales was different, R&D was different, manufacturing was different. So Renault is going to be a formidable force for sure, and they're pretty excited about the hybrid space. I never imagined that Renault will be so excited about hybrid space. They're not going to have diesel to begin with. At least they are studying and dabbling with the possibility, given the fact that horsepower train has it. But Nexon definitely has a strong rival coming in form of the Bridger concept. I mean, we've called it the mini Duster. Let's hope and see whether they carry forward the legacy of Duster, or is it going to be a different brand name. But
I think if you see the concept, it's got a, let's say it's got a spare wheel on the rear tailgate. It's actually an eco sport kind of, concept.
Yes.
Because that the spare wheel also doesn't count towards the sub 4 meter length.
Yes.
So you can maximize the cabin space and have even the wheel outside. So you don't have to have the wheel inside the
Underneath,
cabin and take up boot space over there. So I think definitely it's going to be quite interesting. And Ketan, I think you talked about surprising bringing in the hybrids, but frankly, if you look at it with Cafe, that is just one option.
Indeed.
It's not an option, rather.
Yeah.
People might have to bring in a hybrid, even if it's costly, even if it's, let's say, difficult to produce at an economical scale, because the other option is pay huge penalties in terms of Cafe.
Absolutely.
So they might offset what they would pay in huge penalties by taking a hit on the margin, by introducing an affordable hybrid, because if it's not affordable, it won't sell and you won't meet your Cafe targets. So a bit of a vicious circle there.
Indeed.
But, a difficult place for a lot of manufacturers. Very few, Tata Motors being one with their EV play, and Maruti with their, let's say CNG and some hybrids and future plans for more hybrids and EVs are in the safe zone. Mahindra trying also very hard to kind of get their EV numbers up to compensate for their high CO2 output ICE SUVs. So really, I mean, I think CAFE is really driving and redefining portfolios for a lot of manufacturers. And in that redefining of portfolios, hybrids are going to be playing a bigger role for all the OEMs.
Absolutely, Hormazd. I think only 3 manufacturers there who are in green, Mahindra, Hyundai, Kia, all others will have to have hybrid portfolio in the future. And not surprised that we've started hearing about it from various makers, Renault being the first, and eventually we're very certain that all these other brands will officially start talking about hybrid. The Hyundai and Kia both have spoken about it. And I think talking about the compact SUVs, the new Sonnet is also coming. And I understand that even in Sonnet, Hormuz, there's going to be a hybrid powertrain.
Yeah, they have a 1.2 NA over there.
Yes. They're going to have a hybrid powertrain. Just like Seltos, probably it may not come in at launch. There is a new Seltos, there is a new Sonnet, new Sonnet coming in by the end of 2026, early 2027. And the hybrid powertrain in Sonnet is likely to come in 6 to 8 months later. So yes, there are in the sub 4 meter space, there are hybrids that are going to come. We've spoken about range extender at Maruti Suzuki as well. So a different kind of hybrids coming in, and clearly to address the CAFE, the Indian consumer is going to get a wider choice. And the fuel economy part, which we've harped about post the E20 challenge that we've seen on fuel efficiency, I think the fuel efficiency conversations again going to come back with the strong hybrids.
Exactly, it will, because I think clearly what for sure is that with E20 fuel economy has taken a hit. There's no doubt about it, and especially for models that are not designed for E20. But again, so I think fuel efficiency becoming more critical, more important, purely because of the loss of calorific value with the extra 10% of ethanol. But coming back to the Nexon, Ketan, which we are let's say celebrating its success, though it's had lots of ups and downs mainly in terms of quality issues, perception issues, that, products are not great, the service is not great, still very, very strong. So I think going forward, I think obviously they're not going to let the competition, let's say make inroads, or they're trying not to make inroads. Garud, I think, will be a huge step forward.
Indeed. And I think they don't want to let go of this entry SUV leadership that they have got. They probably may not be a leader in the mid-size space yet, but they are with the Sierra and with the new Punch and with the Garud and with the Leo and Taurus, which are the new gen Harrier and Safari. Tata Motors, clearly, we've seen that they are again with the combined volumes of SUVs knocking it at number 2 position, and going ahead in the future, probably even number 1 position in the SUV space.
That's right. Well, it's interesting you say, I think with Nexon, really, they've got a command over there, and with Punch as well, because Hyundai has tried with the Exter, everyone has tried, but Punch again, phenomenal volume. So these two pillars of Nexon and Punch going up, more of a challenge. Sometimes I think it's to do with the Tata brand, the strength of the brand.
I agree with
and all said and done, if you look at the Harrier and Safari, Mahindra really have got, let's say, are on top of them over there. And I thought last month also, Harrier Safari volumes came down a bit because, you've got the 7XO, which really is a super success, a fantastic product as well. Good engine options carried over from before, improved, let's say, ride and handling. And clearly, I think it's over there that Mahindra definitely has the edge in the bigger SUVs.
Right.
But clearly with the subcompact or the compact SUV segment, Tata Motors, I think Mahindra doesn't have an answer yet. Clearly, I think that's where Tatas are really going to consolidate their position going forward.
Yes, so 28 appears to be a very interesting year from both Mahindra and Tata's perspective. While Mahindra will be coming out with smaller compact SUVs to take on Tata's, Tata is going to go bigger with Leo and Taurus, the bigger Harrier and Safari, and take the game to Mahindra. So it's going to be a good fist fight between the number 2, number 3 for number 2 position.
That's right, absolutely. And it's quite interesting. I think you see where you have your gaps, and those are the gaps you want to fill. So, as you said, in the case of Tata, it's up, and in the case of Mahindra, it's, in the sub 4 meter segment. But, Ketan, one more thing I want to talk on the quality. I think that really has been a bugbear of Tata Motors. What's interesting is that the Sanand plant has been really phenomenal in terms of, addressing that issue. I mean, someone in Tata Motors was telling me that the dealers are kind of wanting stock straight from Sanand. In fact, they're asking for stock from Sanand factory, but I think Tata Motors are, giving them from Ranjangaon, just spreading it out. Can't give everything from Sanand. So I think that's a positive thing going forward that, you've got, let's say, an uptick in quality, largely because of the manufacturing processes. So I think going forward with Garud, do you see more of it being made in Sanand? I mean, what is, I don't know what the capacity there is like, but I would imagine that a newer product would probably be made there almost entirely.
And given the fact that Curve could not do enough volumes, which was supposed to come out of Ranjangaon, so the capacity is there in Ranjangaon, so it is going to be fairly well distributed, and they are also evolving the Ranjangaon facility as well with time. But product maturity is something that is setting in with Nexon as well as the rest of Tata Motors portfolio, and that's got a lot to do with the new age facilities that are coming in. And Sanand being the new state-of-the-art factory they acquired from Ford, and they've taken it to next level. We recently saw an MOU being signed between Stellantis and Tata Motors. So there is an upgradation likely there as well. So
Right.
the idea is to harmonize the quality levels. And there is a recognition within the company that, service experience and quality, take it to the next level. That's that's their North Star right now, because as far as volumes are concerned, they're coming. So it's going to be distributed. But I think the investment into factory also will eventually start reaping benefit to Tata Motors.
Absolutely, Ketan, because I think quality is non-negotiable these days, and I think that's one thing Tata has to really work hard on. I think sometimes they'll have to overcompensate because the perception lingers more than the reality, and so I think that's really a big challenge for them. But I think, yeah, exciting times ahead, especially overall in the market. So I think compact SUV segment heating up. I think when you have one, let's say, super success like a Nexon, everyone wants in on that game as well. And I think clearly, but before we sign up, do you think Tata Motors will hang on to its leadership position, or do you think Brezza could challenge it? Because they are quite close if you look at it. Yeah.
And again, I think the challenge remains with the powertrain with Maruti Suzuki. I think Hormazd, I think given the wide
Must be kicking themselves they don't have a diesel.
Absolutely.
Despite all that they say that
Absolutely.
diesel demand has gone down and there's no need for diesel. We know why.
Yeah.
I keep saying it again. They kind of not misjudged, but they just didn't have the expertise to do a BS6 diesel.
Yes, they do claim that CNG has somewhere, compensated for the loss of diesel, but it's still not enough. And which is where, there are still a lot of suffometer diesel buyers, especially in hinterlands where not a lot of conversation around pollution happens, and people want that performance and feel. So I think that diesel remains the edge. EV is an incremental volume contributor, and plus the dual cylinder CNG is also helping Tata Motors significantly. So I think they've kind of have a absolutely spot on sweet portfolio at this juncture. And with the Garud, they're going to take it to the next level with more tech and more connectivity, and really exciting to see the brand evolve. And it'll be interesting to see with more competition coming in as to where Tata Motors takes the Nexon to the next level.
Well, can the Nexon keep its lead? Can it still continue being the number one compact SUV going forward? We've told you about all the new models that are coming in. Clearly, 27, 28 going to be a lot of competition for the Nexon, but for now, it is the top dog in the compact SUV segment. And that's it from us on this edition of Deep Drive. Do hope you enjoyed watching it. Don't forget to subscribe by clicking on the bell icon so that you are notified every Saturday at 11 a.m. And you can also catch it on our other platforms, Spotify and Apple Podcast. Thanks for watching.